All right, everybody, let's get started. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into how one company used smart procurement to really shake up their digital marketing.
Yeah. You know, it's funny how often people focus on like the SEO and the social media, all that stuff.
All the things you're supposed to do.
Yeah, but they don't always figure out the how.
Right.
And that's where, having a really solid procurement process can really make all the difference.
I love it. And to show us how it's done in the real world, we're looking at Company X.
Right.
They were like the kings and queens of e-commerce. But even giants can have some stumbles, right?
Yeah.
They had all these new competitors popping up left and right. And so they needed a plan to kind of stay ahead of the game.
Absolutely. For Company X, it wasn't enough to just keep doing what they'd always done.
Right.
Think about it. The digital world is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Algorithms, they're getting updated all the time. Consumer behavior is shifting. There's always some new technology coming out. It's a lot to keep up with.
It is. So how did they even start to tackle this? I mean, it sounds like they needed a digital marketing makeover from head to toe.
Right.
Did they just throw money at the problem?
Not at all. They were much more strategic than that.
Okay.
They started with really deep market research. They knew that if they wanted to beat the competition, they needed to understand the landscape better than anyone else.
Okay, so what kind of research are we talking about here? I mean, were they just reading, industry blogs and things like that?
No, they went way beyond that. I mean,
Right.
they were analyzing SEO trends, figuring out the latest social media algorithms.
Oh, wow.
Even getting into predictive analytics.
Okay, well, hold on a sec. For our listeners who might not be, data scientists, can you explain what predictive analytics is?
Sure. Basically, it's using data to make predictions about what might happen in the future. So in this case, Company X used it to try and figure out what their customers would want before they even knew they wanted it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like having a crystal ball. So, okay, they have this, deep understanding of the market. Then what? Did they just go and hire the biggest, shiniest digital marketing agency they could find?
No, their process was way more thought out than that.
Okay.
So first, they actually identified a few top-performing agencies.
Right.
Ones that were known for really innovating and getting results.
Okay.
They even talked to other companies to get the inside scoop on which agencies were the real deal.
Oh, they did their due diligence.
They did.
So then how did they actually pick the right partner?
Well, they used something called a request for proposal,
Okay.
an RFP.
Right.
And this wasn't just some generic template, you
Yeah.
know. This was really detailed, outlining their goals, the work they needed, done their budget, how they were going to measure success.
Wow. So total transparency from day one.
Exactly.
Did all the agencies kind of, jump at the chance to work with them? I mean, it's Company X, right?
Well, they narrowed it down to 5 agencies that seemed like they could really handle the job. But also, that would be a good fit,
Yeah.
culturally with Company X.
Right.
And then get this, to evaluate the proposals, they put together a whole team.
We get team of people.
Yeah, from all different parts of the company.
Really?
It was a multidisciplinary team.
I love that word.
Right.
So it wasn't just the marketing department making the call.
Right. They had people from procurement, finance, IT, even legal.
Wow. I mean, I can see how getting all those different perspectives would be super helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, finance could look at the budget and, IT would obviously look at the technology side of things.
Exactly. It was about making a well-rounded decision, not just picking an agency based on, a flashy presentation.
Gotcha. So beyond cost, what were they really looking for?
Well, they really dug deep into each agency's track record. Obviously, they wanted to see a history of success.
Right.
But they also wanted an agency that understood their unique challenges and could really tailor their approach to meet Company X's specific goals.
So they were looking for real creative solutions.
Exactly.
Not just the same old, playbook.
Yeah. And of course, they had to make sure, the agency's ideas could actually be done within their budget.
Okay, it sounds like they were really looking for a true partner, not just a vendor.
Yeah.
Someone to come in and really collaborate with them.
You got it. They weren't just outsourcing their digital marketing. They were really building a strategic relationship.
Okay, so let's say they've picked their partner.
Right.
Now what?
Well,
Do they just hand over the reins and cross their fingers?
No. The implementation phase was all about collaboration
Okay.
and open communication. They had regular meetings, frequent check-ins, and they were always willing to adapt their plans based on, what was working.
Makes sense. I mean, things change so fast.
Yeah.
In the digital world, you got to be able to, pivot.
Exactly.
So what kind of results did all of this careful planning and collaboration actually lead to?
Well, that's what we're going to get into next.
I'll buckle up, everybody. The results are pretty impressive.
They are.
Okay, so we've heard all about the process that Company X used.
Right.
But did it work?
It really did. And what's interesting is it wasn't like some, magical campaign or a lucky break. It was about like a fundamental shift in how they thought about digital marketing.
I like it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's some lessons here that any business could use.
Right.
Even if they aren't, exactly like Company X.
Yeah.
What's the first big takeaway?
Well, they really changed what it meant to partner with an agency.
Okay.
They weren't just looking for the cheapest option.
Right.
They wanted a team that brought real value.
What do you mean by value? Like more than just, getting the work done?
Yeah. They wanted an agency that understood their long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
An agency that could offer strategic advice, not just execute tasks.
So like the difference between hiring someone to just, paint your house.
Right.
Versus working with an architect to design it.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. So partnership was key.
Yeah, and that goes for how they set their goals too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
From the very beginning, Company X was super clear about what they wanted to achieve.
So they weren't just saying, like, get us more traffic.
Nope. They defined exactly what success looked like.
Wow.
Even how they were going to measure it.
So everyone was on the same page.
Exactly.
From the internal teams to the agency.
Right. It was like they were building a roadmap together.
Mm-hmm. So no one could get lost.
Yeah.
All right, so clear goals.
Yeah, and then this brings us to another key point. The whole team approach.
Okay, you mentioned before that they had people from finance and IT and other departments involved.
Mm-hmm.
Was that really necessary? I mean, did it ever get complicated?
Oh, I'm sure they had some debates along the way.
Right.
But that's kind of the point,
Okay.
To have people with different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So the finance team might be worried about the budget, while the IT team is focused on, how the technology would work.
So they were looking at the big picture.
Exactly.
Not just making a decision based on, one department's point of view. Right. It was about finding a partner that could work with the whole company.
Gotcha. So they were thinking long term.
Yeah. And this leads to another crucial element. They were adaptable.
Okay.
They knew that the digital world is constantly changing.
Yeah.
So they built in these regular reviews and feedback loops to make sure they were staying on top of things.
So it wasn't just like set it and forget it.
Nope. They were always looking at the data,
Okay.
figuring out what was working, what wasn't.
Smart. So they had a clear vision, the right partner, a collaborative approach, and that willingness to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the recipe for success.
It was. And now for the result.
Lay it on me.
Well, their SEO strategy was amazing.
Okay.
They focused on the right keywords, optimized their website content, and they saw a 35% increase in organic traffic.
In how long?
Just 4 months.
That's huge. Okay, but SEO is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right. Their email marketing also got way better.
Okay, how so?
Well, they focused on personalization
Right.
and A/B testing.
We should do a whole deep dive on that sometime.
Yeah, we should.
So what were the results?
They saw email open rates jump by 15%.
Wow. So people were actually reading the emails.
We were.
And did those emails actually lead to sales?
That's where the 10% rise in click-through rates comes in.
Okay, so people weren't just opening the emails.
Nope. They were clicking through to Company X's website.
And buying stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, what about social media?
Well, they really blew up on social media.
Nice.
They partnered with influencers, created great content, and they saw a 25% surge in engagement.
More likes, more comments, more shares.
All of it.
So Company X really turned things around.
They did.
But there's more to it than just numbers.
Right. There are some deeper lessons here.
Okay, so what can our listeners really take away from all of this?
That's what we'll talk about next.
Stay tuned, folks. We're going to unpack all the best insights and show you how to use them in your own businesses. So we've seen some seriously impressive results from Company X. But how can our listeners, actually use these ideas in their own businesses?
That's the thing. It's easy to see a success story and think, well, that's great for them, but my business is different.
Right.
But these takeaways are really universal. They work across industries, even for companies of different sizes.
So it's not just about having, tons of money to throw around.
Nope. It's about changing your mindset.
Okay.
Instead of thinking about procurement as just a way to save money,
Yeah.
think of it as a way to find the right partners and build relationships that can really help you grow.
It's like you get what you pay for, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes spending a little more upfront to get a partner who really gets you can pay off big time in the long run.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that brings us to like the most important thing, being clear about what you want to achieve.
Right. It's not enough to just say, we want more leads.
Right.
You have to really define what that means.
Okay.
Like what kinds of leads?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to measure?
It's like you need a roadmap.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not just a destination.
Yeah. And once you have that roadmap, share it.
With who?
Everyone, your team, your potential agency partners.
So everyone's working towards the same goals.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about something we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
Internal collaboration.
Right.
Company X had people from all these different departments involved.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really necessary? Or does it just make things more complicated?
You know, it might seem counterintuitive, but having all those different voices can actually make things run smoother.
How so?
Well, think about it. The marketing team might be focused on the creative stuff.
Right.
The finance team is looking at the budget.
Uh-huh.
The IT team's got to figure out the technology.
So instead of all those conversations happening separately, they're all happening together.
Right. It's about getting that big picture view.
I like it. So everyone's on the same page from the start.
Exactly.
And lastly, what about staying up to date?
Yes. The digital world is always changing. So you have to build in those regular reviews, feedback loops. Don't be afraid to experiment.
And, switch things up.
Exactly.
If something's not working.
You got it.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has.
We've learned that strategic procurement is about so much more than just, saving a few bucks.
Right.
It's about finding the right partners, setting clear goals, and working together.
And those are things that any business can do.
Exactly. So to wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with this.
Okay.
Think about your digital marketing efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Are you approaching procurement strategically?
Yeah. Are you setting clear goals?
Are you getting everyone involved?
If you can do those things,
you
can really take your digital marketing to the next level.
That's all for today's deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.